Happy Saturday and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino here. We got a fun show. We got a history show. There's just going to be a whole bunch rolled into one. So before I get to what we're talking about, let me introduce David Spang of 9 Dot. David, how you doing, bud?
Doing very well. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So give us the 30,000 foot view. Talk about the company, talk about the vibe, talk about the mission, and then we can get into more detail. I don't want to scare people away as to what we're talking about right away. I want them to at least give us a second to at least set this up before they start doing their me. So give me the 30,000 foot view. Talk about 9 Dot. Talk about what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So 9 Dot is a cannabis beverage company based here in Atlanta, Georgia. We sell a variety of hemp-infused beverages with the main active ingredient being THC. We've been in business for about a year and a half, although I've been in the hemp industry for about 8 years. So really excited today to dive into the backstory of 9 Dot, how we got to where we are, what I see in the market, and I think just clear up some confusion about the hemp industry and what exactly is available throughout the Southeast and particularly, the state of Georgia.
Yeah, and I love it. I think one of the biggest problems is that we have to automatically talk about how anytime there's a new industry, there are always bad actors that come in, that do the money grab, that do it for the wrong reasons. So what I want to do is acknowledge that right away, right? No one is saying every industry that is ever created always has bad actors that destroy it for the rest of the people that are out to just make a living and do things the right way. So I think, especially in Georgia, one of the things that really struck me was it went from illegal to you can get Delta 9 at gas stations at 17 grows. And that's the usual knee jerk of most government is we went from one extreme to the other with no middle ground, right? No one was checking purity. And if you've never touched a drug in your life and all of a sudden you got whacked with Delta 9, it will put you out. Now the good news is that in most experiences that I've seen, it just zonks you. Right, nothing bad is going to happen. It just zonks you. It leaves your system pretty naturally. But that being said, kratom's another great example. These things are gross. Right? They should not be here. All of the benefits that the cannabis and marijuana industry have built up for so long are destroyed when you're making it in a backyard alley somewhere. So talk a little bit about, before we get to the modern day of you, talk about you've been a serial entrepreneur, talk about your history, talk about what got you to this point.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to jump in on exactly what you just said to really start is the bad actors in our industry have really been the Achilles heel, unfortunately.
Yeah, but most industries.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't expect it not to happen. Yeah. Look, who lobbies the government for what is a big play here? Yeah. What the police even know, because one of the problems is we treat our police like they're social workers. They're supposed to be psychologists. How do they know
interpret the law?
It's so hard.
How to read a COA? How to navigate this industry as a whole. Yeah. So spot on, man. Because it's either going to be cleared up through one of two things. One, consumer education. Consumers catch on to these the pitfalls and the bad actors and ways to avoid them and shop in a more smart manner, supporting better companies, or through regulation, which we're already seeing. Georgia passed Bill 494 in October of last year.
Right, but then they knee-jerk the other way.
Yeah,
so they went nothing, knee-jerk, and knee-jerk the other way.
Exactly.
Without any actual, no one ever got on the microphone and said, let me tell you why we're doing this. That never happened.
Yeah.
It was just, this is the bad thing. It's but beverages might be okay, but this is bad, and it's it's all the same ingredient.
Yeah,
all of these things.
And if you look at some of that knee-jerk reaction, the legislation that particularly this year in Georgia, South Carolina had a hard time, some other states, they always focus on those bad actors, right? Keeping it out of keeping it out of the hands of children. Obviously, everyone I know and any reputable person enforces a 21 age verification. Yeah. But there are some people out there who are not, and that's what law enforcement chooses to focus on, unfortunately.
And that's what they make public about all those. Yeah, raise your hand if you wait till you're 21 to buy beer and booze.
Right.
I think I did when I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
I was like, look, I have chest there. No, you're definitely 21. Yeah. So it's just, and again, and it's not, like I said, it's any industry that these things happen with. But I just think the demonization of it didn't help anybody because these, similar to what's going on right now with tariffs. No offense, it's not the tariff that's the fear. It's the violent swings in people's perception and reality. Yeah. You're almost setting up a machine where propaganda is inevitable. Yeah. And I think one of the things, and I think we'll talk about this, the cannabis industry has been propagandized, cannabis part out of this, just what you've done in business, what's gotten you to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been running my own businesses since I was 22. I started actually with a restaurant delivery service that went into grocery delivery. Did that for a few years. We actually, another project we were running at the same time was a consumer product that we took to music festivals, a way to charge your devices. So I had a lot of experience with the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Yep. You have a great idea, you absolutely bust your ass for years with no real fruit in your basket.
Yep.
Only for it to either be a big success or completely collapse.
Yeah, but that being said, you learn the lessons along the way. Smart people are not afraid of mistakes. They just don't make the same once, twice.
Yep.
For every story, you may have failed, but it's better to fail at 22 than at 40 with 2 kids.
Exactly, right? We were swinging for the fences, and we wanted to build as quickly as we could. We put everything back into the company. Like you said, we had some hard learning lessons, as I think everyone in entrepreneurship does, or any business really. I learned from those, took everything I learned over the 4 or 5 years of doing that, and dumped it solely into the hemp industry. I've always been really passionate about cannabis in terms of educating consumers, being a lot of the stereotypes, propaganda. There's just so much of a misunderstanding about cannabis. One of the things people like to say is there's not a lot of medical research. And I would fully support more, full-scale, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. Fun fact, there are more than 30,000 peer-reviewed research papers that reference the word cannabis. It is absolutely one of the most studied plants on the face of the planet. That doesn't
But it was because it was a Category 1 narcotic.
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1. It was not allowed.
We're actually pulling a lot from other countries. Like Israel has done a ton of research with cannabis throughout the years. Canada's done some great stuff. The U.S. has, shout out to the Cannabis Research Coalition, a great group of research scientists and PhDs who are really changing the way we perceive cannabis. They have a great relationship with some of those people over there. So we're seeing a lot of that be more established, but it is well researched.
So one of the things, my wife does this, actually she did this, when Trump cut USAID, she lost her job unfortunately. But one of the things that is really peer-reviewed studies, as great as they are, take years to get into publication. And with the pace, especially since COVID, how much it's been sped up and how much AI now is processing information, waiting 2 years for a peer-reviewed paper to come out is not the best way to do anything anymore. You are seeing, especially in the marketing industry, these people that were so-called experts in marketing, 2 years in the marketing world means you're irrelevant. And their papers are just getting out to the public eye that way. So as much as I am a big fan of peer-reviewed, and as much as I believe that is essential to the world, I'm going to say that if that structure doesn't go and fix itself quickly, we are doomed. I will also say that the amount of fraud that has been coming out of a lot of these papers and everything, that the propaganda has made its way into it. Right. So, and then the last thing I will say is one of the things as a criticism to the cannabis industry as a whole, I think when we went nuts with CBD, we kind of diluted the waters even more. Right? Because all of a sudden now, the endocannabinoid system. And we have this whole other list of benefits and all this stuff, and it's like, hold on, guys. So let me get this straight. So you have found a miracle drug that cures everything, adapts to the body, but the government is not supporting it. Right? So how much of it is, hey, it'll help you, but it's not curing the diseases. Chill.
I think a lot of it is pulled from, there's a lot of studies referencing the CBD industry that are, for example, done on mice. Yes, that's a great first step.
Of course.
I think
and just like Coca-Cola puts out articles saying it doesn't give you diabetes. God forbid it's the Coca-Cola.
But, the endogenous cannabinoid system is a very real thing. And just another full of these fun facts I'll have for you all podcast. First time you get an outside cannabinoid is from your mother's breast milk. There's one to boost your immune system and one to control and regulate your appetite. We are designed by nature to absorb, produce, and intake cannabis.
So let me ask you this question. So cannabinoid, why is that name match cannabis?
So
is that a coincidence?
No, it's by design. Cannabis is the name of the plant. Well, cannabis is sativa, cannabis and you get a little nitpicky green tomato, red tomato kind of thing, but cannabis is the species of plant referring to, and the active ingredient in those cannabis plants, for the most part, this is, again, the whole podcast
terpenes, there's so many different things.
Terpenes, flavonoids, the list goes on, but what we had briefly talked about is the cannabinoids. With CBD and THC, specifically Delta-9 THC, I just never had referred to it as Delta-9 because D8 and other semi-synthetic cannabinoids didn't really exist or weren't a known thing.
And you're talking one molecule off.
It is, D8, D9 are almost identical. But Delta-9 THC, or THC in general, and CBD are by far the two most prominent cannabinoids found in cannabis. But you get dozens of others. There's CBG, there's CBN, there's CBC.
And they're all coming into the limelight because when something stagnates, what do? They come up with another way, right? So it can be, what are we going to do now? CBG. CBGB. We're going to go to the old punk club.
I do think that there's, the sativa is now more of a term in the cannabis industry for effects. I mean, technically they are two different substances in the same genome.
But look, I'm a marketer. I'm not going to say taking different things.
I definitely acknowledge that a lot in the cannabis industry. It is 100%.
It has to. I have no problem with that.
And indica sativa are the best example of that, where you get companies that just slap those names on packaging because it expresses an expected effect from the consumer standpoint.
Which changes. Which preference they want changes over time. Your Netflix and chill vibe.
And then going back to the bad actors, where I think it does occur is when it's just cannabinoid that's in there. One cannabinoid, right? Like they just put a THC or a CBD product out, they slap indica, they slap sativa on it. It is not that. Now, you can make it from a whole plant, get a full spectrum extract. You can reintroduce ingredients to mimic that profile. Those are the more reputable side because, like THC and or CBD when used with CBN does produce a more heavy eyelid, slightly sedative effect. Yeah. Which is really interesting because CBN on its own doesn't really produce a strong noticeable effect. So
and look, everyone's effect on everyone is going to be different.
100%.
How it affects you and CBD. I've seen someone who's never taken a drug like CBD knocked them out. Right. They were in their car like freaking out. Yeah. And it's like that's probably a nervous reaction. Hold on, because we're going to come back after break. I want to leave you with this, okay? Yeah. And I want you to think about this and we'll come back to break. There's a difference between bad actors and people who mean well and are just dum-dums. Okay? So I'm curious when we come back, what percentage of the industry do you believe is a bad actor, and what of them do you believe are just naive dummies that think they're doing well but are just of more damage? So we're gonna go to break. We're gonna come back with that. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with David Spang, and we went off the rafters already in section 1. But let's start with that answer to that question. So, everyone means well. That doesn't mean you're good at business. It doesn't mean like you're not going to work in the gray area. So what percentage do you think are real bad actors, and what percentage do you think are just bad business people or just dummies that just, if they got high when they were a kid and they thought this will be a fun industry to get into?
I think it's a really great question. We could talk a lot about it. I'll try to keep. I think the amount of people in my industry who are setting out to intentionally cause harm, or they know a product is going to do X, Y, and Z damage and they do it anyway, probably relatively small. Yeah, I think the vast majority of the quote bad actors don't fully understand cannabis, cannabinoids, the potential downsides. You go back to just
they understand recreation,
right? And the market follows the sales, and you get consumers who think they need a 500 milligram for this or that, and they're not getting what they think they're getting. Yeah. So I think it's more about the people who are just deeply uneducated or misunderstand the products that they're selling that cause issues in the market. Yeah. That's a really big percentage, though. Yeah. A lot of this, suppliers, I think the issue potentially comes with manufacturers and or distributors who don't really care what's in the product. They care about just what's selling, right? Yeah. So that's a lot of the gas station, smoke shop, head shop industry, not for all of what they sell, but a good chunk. They're just buying what sells rather than paying attention to what's actually in the product.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's a huge percentage of the market.
I think one of the things I've kind of come to realize over the past several years, like supply and demand is such a fickle thing, and for some reason we decided that we think we can alter supply and demand curves, right? And like Rolex has done it forever, where because no one knows how many they make, because it's like the Illuminati of Switzerland, like no one knows how much demand and how those curves make. Yep. But what they started doing was all these brands started doing them. Like everything's a limited edition release. And it's like, great. So, but the value perception is starting to change back to like, what do you mean? Everything you do can be limited edition. So I think the supply demand curve, it works that way, right? Whatever gets hot is what people get behind. Not necessarily what's best for the industry or may in the long run will be good. It's always that quick buck. And like we've seen from the seltzer industry and the ready-to-drink industry, these things change so quickly. Yeah. And at its core, from what I understand, most people want pure, clean THC. Not chemically altered, not bubblegum flavored. Yeah. They want the cleanest, and I liken it to tequila, right? You can buy a craft tequila, but most people just want blue agave real tequila, and it'll last forever. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is part of the problem, is that because we get behind these fads and these marketing and everything is, right, it's not even about brand anymore. It's just about that quick ROI. Yeah. And like, I just think that it has made it, even if you're a good business person, it's so easy to be distracted by the other stuff.
And it's like in my industry, to compare it to the alcohol industry, I think like it's almost as if you could lie about the ABV of the product, right? Yeah. So you get a bunch of consumers out there who think they're drinking 90 proof. Right. In reality, they're drinking a 10 proof.
And that's what's crazy is how important placebo is here. Right. Right. People will actually, it has been unequivocally shown time and time again that if they think the alcohol is higher, they will act drunk.
Right, 1,000%.
No matter what, even though it's not.
Until they get a real 90 ABV product, they drink the same way they were drinking that other one, and then all of a sudden they're blackout alcohol poisoning. You get the actual side effects associated with really high doses of cannabinoids, particularly THC. Right. Something as well I wanted to address that you said kind of early on is like the side effects of THC, I think are very minor. I mean, part of being incredibly pro-cannabis like I am, I think that you need to be very forthcoming with what the potential downsides are. And I think there are downsides with high THC consumption, but when you compare it to almost anything else, the theory that it's been a little bit more established now that you cannot overdose from
you can overdose on anything.
You can't. So you actually are missing the cannabinoid receptors in the part of your spinal column that has to do with controlling your breathing and heart rate. Cannabis, or THC specifically, will never stop your heart. It will never stop your breathing.
Right. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah,
but you can
OD. Shut down.
You can have too much.
I think that you will have more potential mental health side effects and like temporary psychosis that's thrown around a lot. I think we need to link. The evidence right now is very anecdotal, right? Just taking a crowd of people, but I think that's, quote, worst case scenario. It's not going to hurt your liver. It's not going to shut down your liver. It's not going to shut down your kidneys. You're not going to stop breathing. You're not going to,
Look, I think the hypocrisy involved in that, though, is not even, I don't even want to bring it up because I'll just kick this wall down, right? Every single commercial that you watch on TV is for a drug which side effects are immediate death. It's one of the potential side effects. Okay? So, and I know that we are trying to help people with problems with those drugs, but what is really happening is that as doctors, we are creating the problems and we're telling people we have them to make them have the medicine that potentially kills them. So I don't want to do the hypocrisy. But what I do want to say is that I also don't want to see the industry go the other way because, I'm not going to say the R word. I'm not allowed to say it anymore. But smoke yourself, the R word, is something that I've heard 100 people say they're going to do. And that's their goal of the day. Right. Anyone who says that going and taking gravity bong hits doesn't make you dumber is a fool, okay?
Rarely.
Now, whether it's killing the good brain cells or the bad brain cells, I'm not going to get into. I'm just saying that I think we have to approach it as this is a vice. This helps you blow off steam. You should enjoy it within moderation.
Right,
the same way we treat.
I think moderation is important for sure. And again, following research, there's a great research scientist out of Harvard University, and I cannot recall her name right now, but she studied the cognitive impairment.
She won't be able to do it anymore.
But the short-term and long-term impairment of cannabis use in medical cannabis patients. And there's definitely a notable cognitive decline, mainly while using the product. She studied it at the 3-month mark and the 6-month mark after stopping uses of cannabis. And not only do all of those markers come back to where they were previous to using cannabis, but some of them actually went slightly higher. So I definitely acknowledge there's some short-term issues. And that's moderation, right? Go back to moderation. Like everything in life, you need to apply some level of moderation.
That's too controlled of a group because the medical people being prescribed it don't take it the same way as the recreational people do.
I don't know, man. They do. Those are the ones with the high med cards.
And look, I think, again, alcohol as a whole, anyone who's drinking their whole life is different than somebody who hasn't. Right? So, again, what I'm trying to do is say, if we just met each other in the middle and had an industry, and it'll revert through this way, where we have these wild swings, completely prohibition, then everybody got really into it. I mean, I was a 90s kid, so Half Baked and these movies that celebrated the culture, Cheech and Chong all the way through, those movies were great movies because what they did was they put a culture of a subset of people who were pushed to the side, gave them a coming out party to be together, and it's something they joked about. But man, if you can tell me that in the 90s, 1 out of every 3 kids was going to get high, I think you're lying. Without question. Maybe it was just people hung out with. Maybe it's a me thing. But no, so let's go back because I really want to touch on this. So endocannabinoid. It seems like such a coincidence that the cannabis industry was the one touting this, right? That's every industry they do their own studies of how the product's good for you, right? When I used to be at the radio station, they were always like, look at this Inside Radio article, how awesome radio is. I go, who would believe that? What are they going to say? It sucks? So talk about how we came up with cannabinoid. Talk about that coincidence. I'm air quoting if you see it. So, because that's what throws me off, right? There's no way on God's earth that this cannabinoid system is something that is tied into marijuana. That's too sweet a coincidence. So explain the science that went into it, that brought that about, how we should take it seriously. Because again, I'm not a naysayer, I'm just a realist. No one was talking about when we started science in the 1800s, where we really started getting into science. No one was talking about cannabis.
Right. Yeah, I think that probably the biggest reason for that is specifically our Western science and medical industry has chased mostly single molecule prescription drugs to fix a problem without looking at the underlying cause of said, right?
There's no money in the cure, the money's in the treatment.
And,
they could have cured asthma 50 times over if they put all that money not to treating it, but to curing it.
And I think that particularly in the United States, the reason why the research was never done is because cannabis was demonized so hard, put as a Schedule I drug so early on in the quote war on drugs. I think that was the main reason why we don't have more prominent research in the United States to support those facts. And we're relying on other countries. Go back to the research that was done in Israel starting in the 70s and what they were able to establish in uncovering the endogenous cannabinoid receptor. Every vertebrae, everything with the spine has an endogenous cannabinoid system. It's factual that the endogenous cannabinoid system is a base.
Were they the ones that termed the phrase?
Yeah.
Israelis were?
Yep. I think that it is definitely a fine line to walk. I do think that it's just, unfortunately, an area of base biology that has not been fully paid attention to. I do think that certain companies in the cannabis industry have pushed that to its limits in terms of claims and what they think it's going to do. Right. But it absolutely is a base regulatory system. You have endogenous cannabinoids in your body. You have cannabinoid receptors in your immune cells, your brain, your spinal column. I mean, literally.
So let's make this simple science. Let's take any part of cannabis out of this. Every part of your body exists to form some kind of purpose before we had drugs or anything. So what is the purpose of the cannabinoid receptors? Endocrine system, we know. Those things we know. What other purpose of those receptors?
So again, we could segment this off into a whole separate podcast, and I could bring on some great PhDs who are much more knowledgeable than I. But the issue with why that's such a long response is you have cannabinoid receptors throughout your entire body. You have cannabinoid receptors in your immune cells. You have cannabinoid receptors that in your skin cells. They can help downregulate inflammation and pain. The list just continues to go on about what exactly these cannabinoid receptors do and where they're located. So it's a really big conversation, but I think the key takeaway is the endogenous cannabinoid system is a base regulatory system in the body that functions
together. So each receptor is one piece of it, but they work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
To some purpose. We may not even completely know yet.
Yeah. And then I think that's why,
What do they receive from? So receptor makes me assume they're putting information and outputting.
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
do they receive
So like,
from
for example,
the brain?
Literally, everything from your immune cells to your spinal column to parts of your brain, CB1, CB2 receptors. Now there's I think 18 different receptors identified in the endocannabinoid system. And medications interact with some of these exact same receptors. So some of the receptors that help control pain are the same receptors that our opioids bind to.
Sure.
But they are literally called a cannabinoid receptor. Cannabis also interacts with the same receptors found in the body.
Yeah, and that's probably a chemical composition thing. I have to imagine at its core, anything that's come from the ground bleeds in cocaine and heroin from poppy and have similar systems as to how they work and what they bind to, right? Again, I don't know the data of it, but if you think about it, poppy seeds, marijuana, and cocoa leaf are all natural things that we've just farmed so they probably work in a similar way.
Yeah,
it's not like these further ones that are just completely made up in the lab. But those things probably, either the way they latch onto a cell or something, they probably work in a similar way. Because it's natural. Because we didn't have the ability to make these in a lab when people were smoking weed 2,000 years ago, right? And we know they were. That's proven over time. I know. Look, it's fascinating. And the reason I ask is because that's the problem with an abundance of information. People don't want to be told it's this system. They want to be told what it does. They want to know what the purpose is, why it's there. And now I understand that we need thousands of pages of research to get to that point because you don't want to give the wrong information. But I think the industry is hitting people over the head with so much information, and they do this, and why?
Well, I think you can look at it with almost every other industry or where certain information has been suppressed or not fully researched, then you get this wave of the complete opposite where this reactive force comes back and almost pushes too hard in one direction where it's like, no way all of that's true. But the reason it's overclaimed or blown out of proportion to an extent, although it can be based on a lot of truths, is consumers are finally like, wait, that's what? And then it gets blown out of proportion.
And really all it is the pendulum swinging to the middle.
Exactly.
You're so far this way that the influx, if you're doing all these tests in short time frames, of course it's going to go all the way this way. And it'll bounce in the middle. Like I said, that moderation part is with everything. Yeah, so all right, let's take a step back from this because this is already an intense conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the industry. So really, what was it, 16? No, before that, probably 12, 13, where we started the switch over from medicinal to recreational. I mean, it took a long time, but the way that the pathway was, once a medicinal state was approved, they had their system.
If I'm not wrong, I think California went medical in 1998. First medical marijuana law, I think, it was passed in 1998. The places started going recreational in Colorado.
Of course, it was under Clinton.
Of course, I think Colorado went in 2012. I want to say, rec came to Colorado in 2000. But now it's also 44 states, I think, are medical or recreational, or maybe 41.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the United States, though, either has a medical marijuana or a recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
And then the states that don't also have a thriving hemp industry. So the access to cannabinoids, whether they're extracted from high THC cannabis, which is quote marijuana, I just don't love that word, or they're extracted from high CBD. It's based on propaganda. That's not a real word related to the plant.
That being said, no one I've ever met that does marijuana has ever said, I'm going to go do some marijuana.
Yeah,
it's never been said since the dawn of time.
Well, also going back to, like you said, in the 1930s when cannabis was first demonized, cannabis was considered a medicine. So there was such a strong connection to the word cannabis that the word marijuana was introduced to the American public to help demonize it because we didn't know what the word marijuana was. There's theories about it, but it could be related to a potentially psychoactive plant that was found in Mexico at the time. So they started calling it wacky weed, marijuana, and all of these propaganda campaigns.
So there is something in the Dominican Republic. There's a group called mamajuana that they soak into booze. It's supposed to make you like lose your mind. Yeah, I mean everyone's got a story.
Right. So in my stores we never say the word marijuana. It's high THC cannabis and high CBD.
Yeah.
High CBD cannabis is a federally legal hemp-defined product, and high THC cannabis would be quote marijuana as far as the government's concerned. And it's been really cool, though, over the years to see how the hemp industry has grown. Again, there's some bad actors, but I'm going to focus now on, some of the more beneficial aspects of it and how companies like myself and many others throughout the Southeast have been able to provide a lane for education, transparent, lab-tested products, regulated the same way that medical or recreational states have regulated, regulated by law. We kind of regulate it ourselves, but provide access to education, transparent products throughout the Southeast in states that don't have access to these products. Or even in Georgia, there's a medical marijuana program here, but we also have the hemp industry. And I think that there's an avenue for both, which is really cool.
So talk a little bit about, give just people some context. When you say the South, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, I'm assuming are the last adopters. Maybe some of the Midwest. Give me some of those real.
Alabama has gone medical. I think Mississippi's gone medical. Yeah, so I think South Carolina is not, North Carolina is not, West Virginia is not, I want to say maybe like Idaho.
Which is so crazy, because all you got to do is cross the border.
I know.
Right? All you got to do is just go run across the border.
Or you look at like North Carolina, you go into the tribal.
I know, done it.
They're growing their own crops now. It's really interesting to see certain places have decriminalized. City limits decriminalized. Atlanta police.
And look, that's another whole episode, right?
Yeah.
The criminalization of it, that was part of the, right? I always loved, like, my favorite thing as a kid growing up was like in the 80s, right? Cocaine and crack. Cocaine was actually more pure, but cocaine would never end you in jail, but crack, they'll do life sober. Right? Like, we don't have to get into the racial connotation, but like, it's pretty clear that the eye bankers and the freaking consultants in New York City that are blowing lines of coke to go completely fine, but you cut it with some ether and you got a crack and the world ends. Like, we know that stuff. Yeah. So all right. So let's talk about the industry now. So give me an idea of scale relative to alcohol. 0.5%, 1%. Scale-wise of the alcohol?
I don't know what the total market cap for alcohol is. I am more familiar with state by state though in the hemp industry. So we did an economic impact report in South Carolina to do business there. In 2021, it was a $280 to $320 million industry. Texas is going through some legislative issues right now. It was a few billion-dollar industry if you believe their economic impact report. So maybe we are at $50 billion. Maybe it's higher than that throughout the United States, but it is a substantial market. I don't know exactly how that compares to the alcohol industry. I'm sure it's a lot higher. But what I do know is alcohol sales are down, right? We talked about this briefly before. Some reports are saying beer sales are down as much as 30%, which is a substantial hit to any industry. And I think that leads into why you're seeing the hemp-infused beverage space, particularly THC-dominant infused beverages, are growing so rapidly, becoming so mainstream. I think that there are certain, people who are looking at that decrease in revenue. They look at this market share and go, that would be a great substitution. So they're moving forward.
Well, I think everything goes in cycles, and what I'm reading is that these kids just don't go out as much.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up, if it was a Friday or a Saturday night, from when I was probably 13 to, until my wife settled me down and came to me, if I was out on a Friday or Saturday night, I felt icky. Yeah. Like something was wrong. Yeah. And genuinely, and I know this sounds so stupid, but like it irked me to my core that I wasn't out. And it wasn't even like everyone's like the FOMO fear, but I don't care if I missed out on it. Why would I be sitting home if I can be out causing trouble?
Right. Yeah.
But it's just, it does not seem to be like happy hours almost don't exist anymore. What is better than leaving work when you're 22 years old to go to happy hour on a Thursday? What is better than that? I don't understand. It's not a criticism, but if those people are not. So what I'm trying to say is I think everything is always market forces that apply and who is able to take advantage of said things. And I think the perfect storm has aligned where there is now a substitute with less caloric intake, which if you have some self-control and don't eat the whole freaking bag of Doritos, it's less caloric intake, right? It's got something that has the health benefits and the health associated with it is less questionable, right? Because like anyone who's like, oh, no, I drink 6 glasses of red wine a night, it's good for me. Well, you're a fool. Like a half a glass, maybe you can get it on. I get it that there's grapes and everything in there. So I think this perfect storm has created itself where the opportunity for the industry to go forward to hone their pitch, to have lobbyists that are there doing the right, fighting for the right things, to have advertising, because if you also haven't been able to get a bank account or advertise, which makes it really hard to control a narrative, right? That's where like our boy Chad here comes in. PR can only get you so far, right? It can only get you so far. If you can't advertise a message, you're going up against the machine, which if you ever see a Bacardi commercial, all it is a bunch of hot Hispanic women dancing around. How are we comparing with that? How are we comparing with Camila Cabello just shaking her butt on the stage? We can't do that. So how is an industry? And that's what I want to do when I come back from the last segment is I want to talk about what the future is, what your role as that is, and how the industry can ally to better get this information out. Because there is still so much information. I am considered probably in the know more than most in these fields. And again, it's also the concept of that gateway drug also gets marketed, right? Because what's right behind the marijuana, the psychedelics are coming right behind it. And let me tell you, if you've never smoked weed in your life and you take some weed, it'll mess you up. You'll be fine. If you take the wrong amount of shrooms, you're in big trouble. So like, that's the other part of this whole is are you that gateway to it? So there's a lot to discuss. We've covered a lot really quickly, as we always do.
We're getting into big conversations here.
You got one more minute, and just talk about right now your role in this. What do you feel that your role is as an ambassador? Locally, nationally, what do you feel your role is?
Yeah, I think it's to continue educating and normalizing cannabis consumption from all angles. I think the thing I've learned over the 8 years is it is across all demographics, throughout the Southeast. And I think just being able to open courses of dialogue, just like being on this podcast, having it talked about at dinner, any of those avenues, I think is going to be the key moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the thing that pisses me off the most, and this is about everything in life, is like, look, if you have a problem with it, don't do it. Don't do it. Right? If you have a kid who's under 18 and living in your house and you don't want them to do it, don't let them do it. Don't stop other people from enjoying it. Like, who do you think you are?
And then what I'll say there, just to finish it off, is if you don't see the hypocrisy of not supporting a low-dose THC-infused beverage, but yet you drink alcohol or are okay with people drinking alcohol, unless you're trying to ban both, and you don't see the hypocrisy that's there,
that alcohol lobby
is so deeply rooted in stereotypes that you really need to change your perspective. Because that cannot be further. That's a problem.
All right. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the future. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with David Spang, and we're fitting. First off, talk a little bit about 9 Dot because we've somehow went this whole episode.
I think I've said 9 Dot like once.
Okay, so give it the why you guys are different, why it came to market, and then we're going to talk more about the opportunities for the future for both you and the industry.
So I think it's first important to note that I started on the retail side of this industry. Coastal Green Wellness is the name of my parent company. We have multiple retail locations throughout the Southeast that we've been open since 2017, and I identified really early on the lack of market regulation, transparency, sourcing, fair prices, etc. So we developed multiple brands over our 8+ years. 9 Dot was our beverage focus. So we've been working on our water soluble nano emulsification for quite some time. Got a whole other segment we could do.
But that being said, traditionally the THC plant was fat soluble, which is like butter and those things. They came in with a new process. They infuse into water, save calories, save.
And just give us something that we're more used to, right? Like, so the drinks do a few things that I think are really interesting. Number one, edibles have a big genetic variability. They rely on an enzyme in your liver to be digested. Some people have a lot of that enzyme, some people are missing the enzyme. As well as they have a delayed onset and a lingering effect. Edibles traditionally take anywhere from 45 minutes to 2.5 to 3 hours.
2 or 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it is because of the metabolic pathway in your liver and how it converts it to something called 11-hydroxy THC, again, different segment. But what the drinks do, or what a good quality drink should do, is it decreases that onset time down to about, most drinks are about 30 minutes. A good quality
So it's just trying to put you more in control.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what happens is if you take it, you don't think it works, and you drink more.
Yep.
And all of a sudden
Everyone's heard of an edible story like that. I took one, I didn't feel it. I ate the whole cookie, or I ate 5 more gummies, or I ate the whole bag. They have a terrible time. Yeah. So it aims to remove that genetic variability, make it more palatable and consistent consumer to consumer, and effects that you can also rely on. Because one of the things about alcohol is you know exactly how that alcohol is going to affect you. But you take
for the first 7.
Yeah, exactly.
8 through 12.
Yeah, there's a point where it gets a little bit. Mine starts to go, but you take one shot, one beer, one glass of wine. You know how your next 45 minutes.
Which has been standardized throughout the world.
Exactly.
Those are standard numbers. One shot, 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer. With that being said, that doesn't account for a double IPA.
Yeah. Some variability there, but I think what you're seeing in the hemp industry is to make it more palatable for most consumers, trying to standardize that and effects that you can rely on and know what to expect. I think that's why a lot of consumers have responded to the industry so well. And then part 2 to that is it's our ritual. Drinking is our ritual. Sure. If you look back at every culture ever, they have a history of intoxicants. Alcohol, by far, is the most prominent. Sure. But we are, there's something that's evolutionary based, or it does something for us where having that social experience, cheersing, drinking, it does something for us that I think that the hemp industry, or that we're trying to mimic right now. So you can still go to a bar. You're not changing your whole vibe, your whole experience, your whole ritual. It's the same. You're just substituting, instead of alcohol, a low dose of hemp-derived THC. It gives you a different buzz. And like for myself personally, a big thing in why I drink the beverages so much, not only I just enjoy cannabis, but I get hungover after the age of 30, and especially with working so much, I can't sacrifice that next morning. Even if it's half a morning or a day to recover, I can't be brain fog, lazy, whatever. I have to be on point that next day. So alcohol just puts me down, where the hemp-infused beverages do not.
And that's another thing that's really important, because you know when the onset and you know how long it's going to last is. Because, everyone's had the story where they take something and they just sit up all night because it's in their brain and they're anxious. But if it's out of your system in 3 hours, you take it at 7, you're asleep, and usually you'll sleep a million times better when that wears off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's what you're saying. So at 9 again, we took a while to work on our emulsion, making sure that, because there's many ways you can make THC mixed water, but, there's a lot of overclaiming, again, and I don't think people are doing it intentionally. I think that they just go with what sells. So we took a really long time to dial in our emulsion and make sure our effects are as consistent as possible, consumer to consumer, to play off all of everything we just discussed. Also, we wanted it to taste good. There's a lot of seltzers on market. There's a lot of different stuff. We went with a little bit more of a fruit punch forward, low-ish sugar, 35 calories per can. So it's healthier than a lot of beverages. We're not quite to the sparkling water, but it does have more flavor and a little bit more taste than some of those other
things. Isn't that one of those ironic things, right? When you start talking about something like, Diet Coke's healthy. Well, have you ever read what Diet Coke does to your body, to your brain, and how, if you ever noticed, I don't know how to politely say this, I don't see many thin people drinking Diet Coke. It just doesn't happen. So, look, everything in the world is a spin. I do it as a marketer. Like, everything I'm trying to do, right? Lab grown versus natural diamond. It's a spin. It's like, how about instead of listening to people, you decide what's best for yourself and you go purchase that. But that's not the society we built. We built a capitalist society where you have to be spoon-fed and shoved it down your throat, and that's what we follow on trend. That being said, those are great things. So where can they find 9 in Georgia and in some of the other states?
Yeah, Georgia, South Carolina is where our presence is right now. The traditional distribution space of particularly alcoholic beverages has been flooded with hemp beverages so much over the last literally 6 to 8 months. To be really honest, it's hard to get in with a distributor at the moment. So we're self-distributing in a lot of areas. We're working with a few smaller distributors. You can buy it on e-commerce. That's one of the other things. You go to Colorado, shipping and interstate commerce is not legal. in the hemp industry is legal.
Wow.
So you can be,
and that's great too, because all of a sudden you're taking out a middleman, which means in the end the consumer should win when prices justify it's one middleman skip.
Yeah.
No, sorry, two middlemen skip.
Right.
Because you have the wholesaler and the three-tier system.
Well, you are seeing some states implement a three-tier system. They're definitely lobbying.
You want to talk about one of the biggest lobbyist groups? There's not been more wealth in this country created by anybody other than car dealerships than liquor wholesalers.
Yeah.
The amount of wealth created for somebody who takes no actual responsibility for what happens. They don't have to build a brand. All they're doing is distributing them in hubs. And by law, you can't operate in that industry. I know the franchise laws in Georgia. All right, so where were the best place in Georgia? Give a couple places that are good places.
So shout out Hop City. They were an early pioneer. Right. They're a craft beer store. They have a great selection.
Cross Street.
Yeah, Cog Street and West End. Yep. And then a lot of the neighborhood markets have hopped on. So what you're talking about is places like Kelly's Markets, Happy Provision, Old Fourth Ward Market. A lot of the neighborhood markets have hopped on.
What does a can go for in a place like Savvy?
So the 4-packs are anywhere from about $16.99 to like $19.99. You do get a slightly above that for some of the smaller brands, or when you get into the 10 milligrams. Georgia is capped at 10 milligrams now, so we personally have a 3 milligram beverage, which is comparable to a light beer for me. I can have a few of those. For someone like my wife, who just licks a gummy and gets intoxicated, the 3 milligram is still a small.
Well, you're giving consumers choice. Exactly. And that's what the world should be about, right? You're giving consumers choice. And one of the things to realize, especially at 10 milligram, one is probably enough as to having to drink 3 or 4 beers. The math works itself out.
So when I'm in those social settings and I want to have that drink every half hour, 45 minutes, I drink the 3 milligram and it's perfect. Now the 10 milligram, definitely a bit more potent. You're seeing the market move in that direction. It is what's selling more right now.
But dude, I mean, that's why people, anyone who tells me they like an IPA is a lie. They're just drinking because it's the highest out. But it's also 285 calories of a gut bomb.
Yeah.
So all right.
Yeah,
so
you're talking 35 calories. I mean, there's some stuff on market with 0 calories, but 35 calories is what our standard 12 ounce can.
And I'm all for it, man. Use sugar. I don't care what anyone says. Use sugar.
We still use cane sugar. So
use sugar, please. All right. So you got 2 minutes left. So what's most important to me now? What does the future look like for you? And what do you think? What's the ideal scenario for 24 months?
Yeah, so I think what you're going to continue seeing in the hemp industry is bigger and bigger retailers. That's the last hurdle in the industry right now. I think there's some lobbying that's going to happen in Georgia to allow liquor stores to sell it again. I had to stop selling that in October.
Banks have bought on. You can use a bank.
Yeah. I went up and down. I got kicked out of a major national bank. I mean, I had banked with them for like 15 years. My personal accounts, and as a business owner, any of the business owners out there will understand this. It was my personal bank account, my personal credit card, which I had for like 12 years prior to this. It was my business accounts, 3 business accounts, business credit cards, my credit card processing. I was all in with one bank. They gave me a letter that said you have 15 days to figure it all out.
Yeah, well, good luck. They're gonna be begging for you back in the next 12 months. They're gonna be begging for everybody back, so they're gonna regret those stupid decisions.
Yeah. We're locked in now. Banks are coming on board. They see the difference. They understand. But we need bigger retailers. So once you start knocking on the liquor store doors, major grocery chains, I think, is another domino that's going to fall in the next 6 to 12 months. Let me ask you this question, though, because this is what concerns me, right? And this is not a criticism of you, but you're a little guy. Yeah. When all of a sudden those liquor stores come and those big grocery stores come, that's when Diageo gets behind it, puts $85 billion and tries to crush all the competition. Does that worry you? Yes, absolutely. That's why we are running around like Madmen right now, quite literally, trying to gain as much market share as possible, because it now is the time. And I think, like you said, 24 months. I think 6 to 12 months is not. It's already so different from what it was 6 to 12 months ago. I think the next 6 to 12 months, those guys are too smart to go and build a brand from scratch. They're going to buy people. They're going to buy people. I've already heard talks of one brand being bought. I think that. And what sucks is it's the first 3 or 4 that are bought that go like super high valuations, and then it hits a floor because they're never going to be able to do with those brands that they do. Because I mean, with craft beer industry, it's not much different. Which I think is also why the alcohol distributors are signing so many brands. They signed like everyone they could because they want the rights to distribute those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brands that get bought, because that's where all the volume is going to be. Yeah. So they're betting. Yeah. Sounds about right. They're hedging their bets for sure. Sounds about right. So for us particularly, over the next, I'm going to say 6 to 12 months, we're really focused on particular markets. We want to become the preferred beverage brand in Atlanta and work our way out from there. We have a heavy presence there. You and everybody else. Yeah. I don't know. I've never met somebody that's like that about Valdosta. That's a place where I'm really going to get going. Yeah. Have you ever been to Columbus, Georgia? Ooh, that's where I want to get going. I think a lot of brands are looking at it regionally and nationally. They just want to be everywhere. Impossible.
possible in this modern world, marketing world, is impossible to grow scale overnight. The mechanisms in place actually prevent you from doing that. And even if you have lucky enough to go viral, that virality ends so quickly because there's not a competitor in the space.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So,
all right, closing remarks, man. You got 10 more seconds.
Yeah, so everyone, check out 9 Dot, support your local hemp beverages.
Website for e-commerce?
Drink9.com. Absolutely. It is also Drink9. And 9 is spelled out, N-I-N-E, in both the e-commerce website and the Instagram as well. And also, hit us up on Instagram. We are shadow banned. It is also, going back to that, any of the hemp or beverage people, you are so restricted, it is absurd.
Which is amazing because all I do is get hit in the face by bots on social media that are trying to steal my money or like think they're Nigerian prince. So they let those people on.
And somehow those get slipped through, but
unbelievable. All right, you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen and Extra 106.3. We'll catch you next week.